Leadership isn't about being in an office and doing spreadsheets and having meetings. It is to a degree, but I have a mantra with, particularly with operations managers in parks, that they should really be out in the park at least 60% of the time. And then if they need to look at whatever processes and practices they're doing in the offices to say, can we stop doing some of these things because it's stealing time away from being in the park and being a leader, then we'll seriously look at those processes and practices and say, ask the question, do we need to do this, or can we knock this out so that you can spend more time in the park?
Tired of outdated systems holding your attraction back?
Gatemaster believes technology is part of the experience, transforming every touch point into an opportunity.
Imagine seamless online booking, effortless mobile ordering, and data-driven insights at your fingertips.
Ready to revolutionize your guest journey and maximize revenue?
Power your attraction with Gatemaster.
Discover the future at gatemaster.com.
Welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast, where we discuss the latest trends and challenges facing the attractions industry today.
We chat with some of the top leaders in the field and provide resources that will help develop your career in this great industry.
I am Josh Liebman. I am obsessed with the guest experience and helping attractions make that their top priority for success.
And I'm Matt Heller. I am passionate about organizational effectiveness, leadership development, and employee engagement.
Now sit upright, hold on tight, and get ready for the Attraction Pros podcast.
Hey, Josh, how are you?
Hey, Matt, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm fantastic.
All right. Glad to hear it.
Yeah, so I got a question for you.
Oh, okay.
Have you ever built a rocket?
Like one that went to actual space?
Or just up in the air, maybe?
I think that there were some activities at like summer camp when I was a kid. I think it involved a bottle and probably like some baking soda and vinegar that, yeah, something like that. And yes, as a child, I had interest in building rockets that probably I shouldn't have been doing. Some were structured, some were unstructured. Some supervised, some unsupervised. What about you?
Oh, for sure. For sure. Things that ignited and lit on fire and went up in the air. Yeah. Again, things maybe I shouldn't have been doing. But would you call yourself a rocket scientist?
Probably wouldn't call myself a rocket scientist.
Neither would I. And our guest today talks about the fact that recognition is not rocket science. So today we got to talk to Mark Shaw, who is the founder of Shaw Thing CX. And one of the things he talked about was how he really frames the customer experience. And a big part of that is around the employee experience. And of course, a big part of that is recognition. And he really says we need to amp up our recognition, go 11 out of 10 as a Spinal Tap reference, and really bulk up our recognition. And he really differentiates that from rewards, which I really appreciated.
Yes, I liked his take on recognition, that he said that recognition isn't rocket science, and talked about how, yes, it's the way that it interacts with rewards and which one is more important than the other, which one resonates more, and which one has, frankly, a longer shelf life as well in terms of what resonates best with the employee. We won't give it away, but you can probably guess which one is more impactful just from hearing the way that we talk about it. He also talks about the difference between CX, which is customer experience, and customer service, and I think that message resonates really well. It's definitely something that I wholeheartedly agree with in terms of customer service being a part of the customer experience, but definitely not synonymous with each other.
And one of the other things that he talks about that kind of goes throughout the entire conversation is the ACE framework, which is really a way for a business to look at what it's doing, what it's good at, where the gaps are, in order to create the kind of customer experience that they really want to create. And it takes into consideration things like leadership and recruitment and training and onboarding and recognition. And, oh, by the way, the guest experience and, the whole puzzle pieces that goes into creating such a great experience for our guests.
Mm-hmm. And spoiler alert, the ACE framework is largely geared towards the employee experience and how that directly impacts the guest experience, something that, of course, we like to talk about very often, and it was great to hear Mark go very deep into it. So should we crank it up to 11 and get to this interview with Mark Shaw?
Rock on.
Hey, Mark, welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast. We are so excited to chat with you today. How are you?
Yeah, I am great. Thank you for having me. Good morning, Matt and Josh. Been a while since I've spoken to you, Josh, but always a pleasure. How are you both?
Yeah. We're good. We're excited to talk about all things CX. So thanks for asking, and thanks for joining the show. And as we jump into this here, why don't we get started? Tell us about yourself. Tell us about your background and your career.
So my career started as a 14-year-old in a kitchen pot wash, which then I graduated to become a waiter, and then a head waiter, and then a restaurant manager, and restaurants got bigger and bigger down in south of England and London. And after about 12 years of doing the same thing, I kind of wanted to branch out a little bit more into hospitality with leisure. And I was fascinated by the connection between those two experiences. And Dave & Buster's, who you'll be familiar with, no doubt, had just signed a franchise agreement to open in the UK, and so that was my first taste of the American side of the business, I guess. And there's a difference between how the Americans set up their stall versus the English. The English have a bit of an attitude about servitude, kind of bit of a hangover from the upstairs downstairs days when the Queen would order her staff to take the corgis for a walk and all that kind of stuff. Whereas in America, it's very much more embraced as part of a culture that, ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen, and legendary service and all of that kind of stuff. So it really spoke to, I guess, my inner something that really resonated with me. And so I learned a great deal from that experience. And then from that was a stepping stone into theme parks. And it was kind of a weird story. The general manager of Chessington World of Adventures, Nigel Elliott, was a local to our first Dave & Buster's in Birmingham, and he used to take his family. And of course, in there you've got games, and you've got retail, and you've got food and beverage, and so on. And he was looking for a head of commercial for the park, and he was a big fan of Dave & Buster's. So the brief he gave to the recruitment agency was, I'm looking for a Dave & Buster's kind of person. I was general manager of the Bristol store by this time. But looking for a change again, and I just happened to walk into the recruitment office a week after the brief, and they said, I think we should get you in front of Nigel. And that was the start, the commencement of my theme park days, which was kind of weird at the time because I'd never imagined that. And I remember my first few weeks feeling very much imposter syndrome, and I figured it was only going to be a couple of months before they worked out that I wasn't the right guy for the job. And the converse was true. In actual fact, we got some runs on the board really early commercially, and it was all going very, very well. And I think it was about 9 or 10 months later, Glenn Erlam had come down from Alton Towers to take over as divisional director, and we'd bought Thorpe Park. So suddenly, the news is announced, and there's going to be a restructure, and my job was effectively up in the air. And then suddenly I was promoted and effectively had to run 2 parks commercially. So, and an incredible period. Merlin, you'll know the story, probably the fastest growing attractions group in the world of the last 20 years, second largest family attraction group in the world behind Disney. And there was a lot of great people that I was very fortunate to work with. So that was, I guess, a big part, combined with the hospitality background, because I think that ethos of hospitality, I took some of that took all of it into the theme parks, really. And I think that I've seen that in other hospitality people who've gone into attractions, where you can see that sort of guest-centric focus and a different attitude. But also, just working with some amazing marketing people, some great product development people, designers like Kathy Meese, John Wardley, and you just soak this stuff up. And I just found myself in terms of growth in a probably 4-year period of just, wow, this is I'm keeping up, and I'm learning on the run, because I think within a year I was project champion for Beano Land, and I had no idea. Theme parks were brand new to me, so I kind of had to wing it a bit, but it all turned out very well. And I guess that's the second part of my career, which has been predominantly theme parks and attractions. Yeah, and I love it. I just love the core of me. I'm a people pleaser. I love seeing people having great times. And as a designer and a curator and a coordinator and an orchestrator, it's a joy and a pleasure when you see all of those efforts that go on behind the scenes, whether it's in front of a spreadsheet or in a meeting, come to fruition in reality, and you walk around the park and soak it all up, or you walk around the restaurant and soak it all up, whatever it is. It's a very fulfilling and satisfying career choice, I think. Certainly much better than my first career choice which was I was trying to be tempted by a friend's father to go into insurance, and I'm very glad that I didn't, because that would have been a whole different boring story.
Yeah. Well, Mark, we are glad you didn't go into insurance also, so that we get to have this wonderful conversation, because this is not the Insurance Pros podcast. So excited to hear more and more about what your background is, but also what you're doing now. So tell us also about Shaw Thing CX.
Yes, thanks, and thanks for being very specific about the pronunciation there of CX. Customer experience, of course. So I've taken all the learnings and the success, particularly of Adventure World in Perth, where I was lucky enough to get the role of CEO back in 2010. At that point, Adventure World was the second lowest rated park in Australia. With a competitor set of about 12 parks, amusement parks, water parks, theme parks. Second lowest with 59% 4 and 5 star reviews. And I led a brilliant team of people for 6 years, and by the end of that 6-year period, we'd become comfortably the highest rated park at 93% 4 and 5 star reviews on TripAdvisor, 73% 5 star reviews. I think that beats 3 from memory of 4 of the Disney parks. Oh, sorry, my alarm's going off. So it was also, but more importantly, because here's the connection between the elevation of the guest experience and commercial outcomes, we doubled the size of the park in terms of attendance, revenues, and profits. So I then took a period of time after I had to move back to Melbourne for family reasons. I took some time to reflect on what had actually happened there, because I thought that was quite important. It surprised me. It wasn't part of my plan to. It was certainly my plan to elevate the experience, because there was plenty of upside and opportunity with the park from day one, but I didn't expect that. And so I started building a framework, which I call ACE, which is Amplified Customer Experiences. It's a 7-pillar model that is sort of built upon the service profit chain. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that model by Heskett et al. Featured in the Harvard Business Review. They've written a book about it, but it posits that the employee experience drives the customer experience effectively. And so these 7 pillars start with leadership, and I call that ACE leadership. ACE recruitment, possibly the biggest of the pillars in my opinion. We can talk about that a bit more. ACE inductions and onboarding, ACE training, ACE recognition and rewards, in that order, not the other way around, because I think recognition is a much underutilized tool and has much more impact and longer term impact than reward. The guest centricity, which is really about, product development, product enhancement, what I call pristine park presentation, PPP. And then finally the tools, which is something similar from the service profit chain. So tools being IT, AI, a broom, a buggy, a lawnmower, a greenhouse, right? Whatever it is that helps amplify the ability of the team to deliver the result. And that is broken down then further into 60 different building blocks. for those 7 pillars, and I use that as a framework to assess where a business is at any point. And by the way, I don't just work with attractions and parks. I do predominantly, but I also work with hospitality. I'm working with a government agency here in Australia, and I've done like IT support firms and so on, and they've gone on to quadruple in size. So that's nice. So the kind of, and that supports the theory that the premise of the framework is applicable to any business. And it really is. I mean, if you go back to sort of leadership, recruitment, induction and onboarding, recognition, they're all about the employee experience. And that connection between the employee experience and the customer experience for me is essential. Particularly if you're, I mean, obviously if you're an online business, not so much, but where you have a high touch, point business like hospitality or resorts or theme parks, anything like that, there's a lot of people involved. You cannot deliver 5-star experiences without that discretionary effort piece.
100%. That is definitely something that that Matt and I talk about a lot, kind of between the intersection of the guest employee experience and how one really impacts the other. So I think that there's a lot of great things that we can really unpack here. But even as we kind of get into it, looking at it from 30,000 feet, I wonder if you can help us really understand your definition of what is CX and why do people often confuse that with customer service?
I think the confusion comes from, through periods of time, we go through phases in business where the focus back in the 90s was very much about customer service. Customer is king, all that kind of stuff. And then suddenly the light bulb goes on that it's a bit bigger than customer service. Customer service is a subset of customer experience, but customer experience is everything from landscaping to signage to lighting to air conditioning, air quality, even marketing efforts, right? Because if the marketing pitches the experience too high, there's an expectation level that you can't necessarily meet. It's actually every input into the overall experience, and that experience is a tangible and intangible thing. It's a feeling. It's how I think CX is well described as how a brand makes you feel. And often, I think with great experiences, you don't even notice the details that are happening all in synchronicity at the same time. It just feels good, and and it's a good experience. It's a great experience. So it's everything. I don't underplay the element of customer service, the service interactions piece. Excuse me. In fact, I'm a bit of an evangelist on this piece in particular, because I think a lot of attractions tend to put a lot of focus on product and marketing the hell out of the product, and often the operational side of it's not quite there to support it, and that's a big miss. If you look at the research, there's a research piece that Melbourne University actually did back in about 2008, 2009, where they researched 5 attractions in Melbourne, and one of the key learnings from that paper was that the people who visit the attractions value the interaction with the people that work at the attractions as much as, if not more, than the product. So you can build a $20 million roller coaster, but if you're only spending 1% of your budget on training and induction and recruitment, and you've effectively then got a kind of an average team of people, that's not gonna fly. There's another survey, you might be familiar with it actually. There's a survey, I can't find it. There's a survey that comes out of the UK every year. It used to. Well, they survey 1,000 theme park goers in January, and they ask them a number of questions about what are the main satisfaction drivers. And the number one satisfaction driver is the service interactions they have with the people that work at the park. And I think Disney's research also backs this up. And if you look at exit surveys at theme parks, and I've done this both at Adventure World, and I reached out to about 6 different parks. I think Universal Studios is one of them, and a number of the Australian parks and so on, and asked them about their exit surveys. The number that came back was consistently between 48 and 50% of people said the reason they came was word of mouth. So if you're not delivering on the experience, you're missing. You can spend all your money on marketing if you want to, and of course you should. You should have probably 5%, 4 to 5% of your budget on marketing, but the word of mouth will be a massive driver of success. And so if you're not smashing it, and the customer journey of theme parks long, right? It's an 8-hour day. You've probably 40 or 50 different opportunities to either impress people or really, piss them off, if I can use that word. But do you know what I mean? It's like there's a lot of opportunities to get it wrong. So to get a 5-star review out of a theme park experience is you're doing pretty well.
So Mark, I'd love to go back to something you said earlier that I completely agree with. And you talked about how important recruitment is to this process, because if you don't have the right people, you're not going to be able to deliver the kind of experience that you're looking for. And by the way, I also want to say how much I love that ACE framework, the fact that there's so many facets of that. Before you even get to the guest experience, you've got recruitment, and you've got recognition, and you've got leadership, and you've got training and onboarding. I just love the fact that there's so much emphasis on the team and how the team perform. But I'm wondering if we can go a little deeper into what you said was probably the most important part, which was recruitment.
Yeah. So recruitment, I think, there's this saying, people are your greatest assets. And I'm going to challenge that with a slight tweak. I think the right people are your greatest asset. And this is something that I guess I've learned over 30 years, probably. I've always been pretty keen on making sure I get the right people, but over the years, I've kept doubling down on being really fastidious about who I've recruited, and then who as the teams get bigger, who we've recruited. Because you start to realize that a lot of your problems go away when you work a little bit harder at the recruitment piece. I've heard it said that managers spend 3% of their time in recruitment mode and 97% of their time managing the problem they've recruited. And if you kind of take that perspective and stop and think, because here's the problem, right? Everyone's really busy. When I say stop, I mean, we've got some holes to fill in the team, right? It's always a Debbie Downer when somebody great in your team comes to you one day and says, you're happy for them because they've got a new opportunity and they're going to go and take it, right? And they've grown and they've outgrown their role, and they go. And, I remember having conversations with my number 2 at Venture World. Our learning and development manager told us he was going to go and set up his own company. And we're thrilled for him, and he's gone on to do really well. But at the time it was like, damn, right? And then I go, you know what, Ross? Our challenge now is to go and find somebody even better. As good as this guy is, this is an opportunity. This is our target. We'll go and find somebody even better. And I've sort of stuck to that mantra since. And I think if I give you the example with Adventure World, we, in any typical year, would hire about 250 new seasonal casuals, because it's a seasonal park, right? So we go through about 3 intakes, 3 processes of auditions, and then whittling that down into one-to-one interviews, and finally the job offer. And when I started that role, we were probably hiring 1 in 1.7 applications. By the time I left, we were hiring 1 in 7. So we're turning 6 people away for a casual role. And what happens then, and that, by the way, over the years went from like 1.17 to 1.3, sorry, 1 in 3, 1 in 4, 1 in 5, 4 years later, 1 in 6, and then finally 1 in 7. And what happens is you end up with a team. We built a team that was literally 70% 5-star employees. What I would call 5-star employees, just a lovely, warm and engaging, naturally enthusiastic, positive kind of people that you wouldn't mind being stuck on a desert island. And when you get a team of 70, like literally 70% like that, there's magic, right? Because they lift, the 70% are lifting the other 30% who are 4 stars, by the way, and are now looking up to seeing these role models of what 5-star looks like, and they're growing almost into that sort of next level. And it's not only a joy for the customers, but it's also a joy as a leader to just be around these people. And I cannot, emphasize that enough. It was an absolute joy, day in, day out, because you're just surrounded by incredible people. So it is that if I could go back in a time capsule and have a conversation with 25-year-old Mark Shaw, I'd be saying, my number 1 tip would be go really hard now on your recruitment. Don't compromise. If you have the tiniest doubt in your gut about this person, say no. They could be lovely, they could be nice, but if they're not bang on for that job, don't take them. Keep going, dig a bit deeper. It's like mining for gold, right? You've got to, it's not sitting on the surface. You've got to put the effort in. You've got to put resources behind it. You know, if we're hiring 1 in 7 people for 300 roles, I think towards the end, because we had about 500 casuals, about some returning, and generally about 300 new intake. That's 2,100 people my team had to audition and then process through the one-to-one interviews and effectively build a new team of 300 people. That's a lot of work. It's a lot of extra hours, the evenings, weekends, putting the grind in. But what they started to realize was that their life thereafter, once they got those people on board, and the return on investment on every other activity, whether it's inductions and onboarding and the time and resources and money involved in that, and then the training, which we doubled in terms of the number of hours training we gave them, and then the reward and recognition piece, which we also doubled down on. The return on investment on every one of those activities, and leadership, right? Your presence as a leader gives you exponentially more than if you hire the average three-star sort of person, because they're not going to change. You can do the training. You can do customer service training. I've seen people do customer service training with a group of people who are kind of 3- and 4-star people, and a few 5s maybe, and it doesn't really have a lasting impact, because at the core of these people isn't their their bent to serve people and do it in an authentic and lovely way. That's a very long-winded answer to your question, but I'm super passionate about it, because I think that is the number one thing you have to get right, closely followed by all of the others, particularly leadership. And when I talk about leadership, presence in particular, and role modeling, leadership isn't about being in an office and doing spreadsheets and having meetings. It is to a degree, but I have a mantra particularly with operations managers in parks, that they should really be out in the park at least 60% of the time. And then if they need to look at whatever processes and practices they're doing in the offices to say, can we stop doing some of these things because it's stealing time away from being in the park and being a leader, then we'll seriously look at those processes and practices and say, ask the question, do we need to do this, or can we knock this out so that you can spend more time in the park?
So Mark, on the topic of leadership here, that brings up a question we wanted to ask, because you've said that great leadership doesn't start in the boardroom, but starts in the mirror. And curious if you can expand on that and tell us, what does it mean for a leader to truly lead themselves first?
Yeah, I think it's quite a big question, isn't it? Because I think one of the things, and I saw this on a podcast, I think it might have been Diary of a CEO, somebody talking about a lot of CEOs who think that it's really cool to have like 4 hours sleep and work, 18 hours a day, whatever, 20, because that's sort of, you're kind of hero for working these long hours and you've got this energy and so on. But what the study shows that if you don't turn up rested and in the right frame of mind, your body language when you walk in the room, people read it straight away. And you're a little bit shorter and clipped and not as patient with people. So even just showing up in the right, the best version of yourself, because you've had a great night's sleep and you've had rest and you're eating well and you're exercising and all that kind of stuff. You're taking care of yourself first, and you look in the mirror and go, I'm good for the day, right? When I walk into this place of work, we call work, my impact on people is going to be positive. I'm going to have the patience. I'm going to have a softer tone. I'm going to be understanding and patient, and people are going to feel my energy. Then I think I think one of the things with leaders is they have a tendency sometimes to want to drive things and make all the calls, make all the decisions, rather than getting people involved in the process and collaborating and getting them to, like, always teasing stuff out of them so that they own the solution. Quite often, I don't always succeed in this as a mantra if I'm running any kind of meeting, but I do try and get them to kick the meeting off, and for me to sit back and not actually get involved until they ask me to, if that makes sense. It's quite hard to do. It's quite hard to, as you can probably tell, I like talking, to be quiet and just listen and let them find their way to the solution, or find a possible solution, but to want to bounce it off you and then bring your experience into play. That in itself is it's really empowering for people, isn't it? When they come to the solution and they realize that they've got there without somebody holding their hand, and that's a learning too, right? And that's forming new neural pathways, right, about how you do the problem solution finding process that will kick in future moments where they need that, right? So they're actually developing their own skills in that sense. So I think that's really important. I think that role modeling, I remember, we had a challenge, and this is a big learning for me in the theme parks in London. We had a lot of teenagers, particularly at Chessington, because we were close to the railway line, and they were messy. Like they would get, 10,000 people in the park, and they could get trashed. And sure, you got a litter picking team, right? But that's not going to cut it. And the only way you can maintain pristine park presentations is if every single person in the park, out in the park, is picking up rubbish. And so, one of the things that Glenn Erling taught me was very quickly, we don't walk past litter, right? We just stop. And if we have to move 10 meters out of our, pathway to pick up the smallest bit of litter, we will do it. And we'll pause the conversation that we might be having with the colleagues walking around the park, but we're going to stop. We'll climb over the fence to pick the crisp wrapper out of the bush because it's blown through the fence, but it's visible to the guests, right? So and if everybody in the park, if there's 100 and 130 people on any one day working in the park, and they're all stopping to pick up the litter because they see that the CEO, the boss, the divisional director, whatever your title is doing that and doing it without compromise, then that becomes culture, right? That becomes your culture. And so, and I think, it's really important as a leader to understand that people are looking at you all of the time for cues. So everything that if you want to model behavior, if you want a particular behavior out of your team, you've got to model it yourself, and you've got to model it at an amplification of 11 out of 10. I don't know if you know that there's a scene in Spinal Tap, which is a pretty old movie now, but where the amplifier for the rock guitarist goes to 11, and that's a really special Marshall amplifier that nobody else has. You've kind of got to do that, and I was always very intentional. If I go back to Adventure World, the first thing I did in the morning was do all my I'd read the reviews actually first with a cup of coffee, and then I'd respond to the reviews personally, because as a leader, I wanted my team to know that I saw that as really important to be on top of it and to take ownership of, whether it was a complaint, whether it was a compliment, and cherish the feedback. The next thing I would do with my number 2, general manager of operations, is the two of us would go out to the park, we'd attend the briefings, we'd set the tone up for the day, read the positive reviews back to the team, and then we would go and position ourselves at the entrances to the park, and we would high five the kids as they came in, and we'd say good morning and welcome to people. On a very, very, very hot days in Perth, we'd set up water stations with chilled water, and Ross and I would go out with a bunch of other guys from the team and drag people out of the offices to walk around with trays of chilled water and offer them to people to say good morning. No, it's a hot morning, it's like a chilled glass of water. Absolutely modeling it, and very intentionally in front of as many team members as we possibly could, so that they could see that that's what we were about. And it wasn't just paying lip service to it. We're rolling our sleeves up and demonstrating that those behaviors. And at 11 out of 10.
So, Mark, I love the fact, all the things that you just talked about, I'm sitting here nodding my head. If we were on video, you would see that. But I had to smile the biggest when you mentioned Spinal Tap, because I'm a musician. I love that movie. I actually just saw it again in the theater. They're playing it here in getting ready for Spinal Tap 2. But anyway, so I appreciate
brilliant
the reference to 11.
Yeah, I just love when the guy interviewing him says, why don't you just make 10 louder? And then he pauses comically, and then he just goes, well, this one goes to 11.
Yes. So matter of fact,
he hasn't got a brilliant, and so British.
Yeah. But I'm wondering if we can revisit, if we can go to 11 on the topic of recognition, because you mentioned that recognition is so much more important than reward, and I'd love if you could break that down for us.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think reward, right? If you take it at this basic level, people get salaries, wages, whatever, and you need that domestic thing that takes care of it. There's the research about bonuses, that the impact of a bonus only lasts about 3 days, because people have usually pre-planned what they're going to spend the bonus on, and then if they spend it, and then they get the thing, and then that moment's passed, and they end up going back into the routine of, I'm getting it up, I'm going to work, and do my thing, and right. That's really not. The bonus doesn't really drive people, I don't think. Recognition, on the other hand, we all know, right? When you get genuine recognition, when you've done something worth recognizing, and somebody does recognize it, makes you feel great, and it reinforces the behavior. It's not rocket science, and yet again, I think it's a bit like recruitment. We get so busy that it's not planned and it's not intentional. And by planned, I mean, so for example, I never enter the lottery, or very rarely. Sometimes my kids will convince me maybe it's worth a punt, right? But because I have this feeling I never win anything. So if you've got a team of 500 people and you've only got one employee of the month, it's not very motivating, is it? Because you know there's probably at least 30 people, or even if you're 5-star and you're great, there's probably another 30 people in the mix that are going to probably inch it in front of you. So you can't. That's not very motivating. So one of the things we did at Eventual was really ramp up the recognition piece, and we increased the frequency. So we had an employee of the week, an employee of the month, department of the week, department of the month, employee of the year, department of the year, and so I think we kind of multiply that by about, I don't know, 6 or 7 times the opportunity to actually get some recognition, either as an individual or as a team. And then we had a wall of fame that was public. It was a public sign in the park next to guest services that had the employee of the year from the day we started back in 2011. Then we introduced something called busted cards, which all the team leaders, supervisors, managers had a bunch of these busted cards, and obviously a play on the word, but you've been busted, right? You've been busted going above and beyond for a guest, and it would be instantaneous on the spot. You've been busted, signed on the back. You get a free lunch or a cinema ticket, something like that, something of reasonable value, but very instant. And it gave the team leaders, supervisors, managers that sort of tool to just be able to do it, and remind them that, when I go out in the park today, I'm going to look for these people doing something special, but genuinely special, not just you turned up for work and did a good job, right? Like just really going out of the way to help a guest, and very specific about that, not just doing a great job, but doing something really great for the guest, really focused on that specifically. And then that sort of, amplification of the celebration, an elevation in the value of, say, the gift certificates for an employee of the month. You didn't get one for employee of the week, you just got recognition. I just got called out. But an employee of the month, I think we went from something like $50 to $200, something like that, to give it real value, rather than just kind of paying. Again, I think a lot of businesses just kind of pay a little bit of lip service to it. And doing it as publicly as you possibly can. And then, going back to, we were talking just a while back about the team briefings in the morning, and then any morning, the first arrivals, we probably have 30 or 40 people there. Myself and my number 2 would attend the majority of them, and we'd take with us our 5-star reviews, and we would read them out to people. And quite often there would be people in that bunch of people who would be named in the review, so they would be getting instantly, and all their colleagues and teammates would be applauding them. And that's a great way to start the day, because again, you're reminding them about this feedback loop of the guests really appreciate it and they really love it. And then we would get some of the guests, we'd invite them, we'd incentivize them with coffee and a muffin, or brekkie burger or something, and say, would you mind actually coming down and actually personally giving, because your feedback's so good and so powerful. It's so much more powerful if you can actually get the guest to turn up, or even video it on their phone and send it in. Because the words are one thing, but when that person is actually standing in front of the team and saying that this is what happened, and I've been to Disney and I've been to Universal Studios, you guys are just as good, and smashing it, they're just soaking this up, and it's feeding them like it's so powerful. And yeah, I think a lot of businesses, a lot of leaders just don't have recognition high up enough on their agenda. It's not intentional enough. I encourage leaders to, for example, put a note in their calendar on a Friday morning, recognition, just put recognition in there, to flag with you, to have a think about who is it in your team this week that maybe deserves a bit of recognition. It might be multiple people, but if there's a genuine reason to do it, then do it publicly, do it as loud as you can, and send them off for the weekend. If they're Monday to Friday people, send them off for the weekend on a high. They go home. They can go home and tell their wife or the kids or their parents or whatever, whoever, their boyfriend, girlfriend. You know, I just got some great recognition. How good is that? And it's so powerful.
This is awesome stuff. I mean, just everything you shared there. I love how you said recognition isn't rocket science, and just making it about just tapping into their emotions and their feelings. Love how you said reading off the 5-star reviews, especially because many of the people might be named in them. I saw a stat not long ago that said a 5-star review is 5 times more likely to mention a personal interaction or an individual's name than even a 4-star review. And when I talk about that, like at conferences, I said, pull up your Google reviews, put that to the test. Are your employees being mentioned? Are they being named? Also love what you said about
true.
Yeah. Also love what you said about a bonus lasting 3 days, and I think that is probably a wake up call for so many people. Of a bonus, there's the tangible value of it, so we obviously think it's going to resonate well with the team members, and it will, but it has such a short shelf life on it, and eventually, now it's in the past, now it's in the rearview mirror.
And by the way, don't get me wrong, I'm not advocating taking the bonus away. I'm just saying ramp up the recognition part as well. Then you're going to see magic. And that stat about 5-star reviews, I thought you were going to give me the stat about the difference between a 5-star and a 4-star review in terms of loyalty. Do you know what that number is?
No, tell us.
So this comes from a piece of the customer satisfaction research that Xerox did back in the 90s. It's a bit dated, but I'm sure it still applies. In fact, I know it does, because there's been subsequent studies across 6 different industries that support this. The difference between a 5-star and a 4-star review in terms of loyalty is that the customer is 6 times more likely to repurchase that product, experience, service than somebody who scores you a 4-star. That, right there is the moment where you go, so 4 stars aren't that great then. I used to be in that camp.
Not if you compare it.
No, well, I used to be in that camp. I mean, I gave you that stat at the outset about Adventure being 93% 4 and 5-star reviews, 73% 5-star. It's only really the 73s that count, because those other 4-star reviews don't guarantee you loyalty. You guarantee loyalty. And I think at that point also, by the way, you can be more confident and aggressive with your pricing increases. Not to the point where you obviously gouge people, but you might, instead of going $1 on a ticket price, you might go $2 and do that comfortably. And that's effectively what we did at Adventure World. And there were a few moments, there's a few sleepless nights the night before the ticket prices went up, where I'd wonder about, or the season pass went up, and we'd wonder whether the sales volumes would go down. They never went down, because we were doing such a great experience. People just happened to go, I don't care if it's another $2, we're still going.
Right. Speaking of loyalty, and I know we only have a couple minutes left here, but I want to just quickly touch on loyalty programs, and I think that there's different schools of thought on it, maybe some competing schools of thought on it, and I know that they can definitely be great for marketing, they can be great for repeat visits, but do loyalty programs actually create loyalty? I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Do you want to have a stab at what you think my answer might be? I
hope we're on the same page. I can give you my answer.
Yeah. I think loyalty programs are a way of buying your way into loyalty rather than earning it. I think you should earn it through a continuous improvement mindset that is guest focused, that delivers what the customer or the guest wants, rather than just trying to. I think it's good for data capture, if you like. And if you can create a community sort of feel with it, maybe there's value. But I don't think I don't think there's any harm to it. I just don't think it's you're kind of trying to incentivize people. You're trying to buy loyalty rather than earn it, and I think that's the crux of it. Focus on earning it. Focus on delivering on the customer promise, giving them value, and you don't need that. I don't think you necessarily need a loyalty program. I kind of feel it's like a cheap way of. Imagine if you had a relationship with somebody and you had a kind of loyalty program for them. You work hard at relationships, right? Don't have friends that you've got somehow got some sort of like, if you're still friends with me in a year's time, I'm going to do something for you. Do you know what I mean? At the basic human level, it's just like, respect me, validate me, show me some value, and I'll be your friend forever.
So you mean that punch card that I just gave my wife, I should probably take that back?
You know, it's like that question about appraisals. There was a book, I can't remember which book it was now, where the guy was saying you shouldn't need, like, you don't sit down with your wife once a year and do an appraisal with her. Why are you doing that with employees? It should be a constant communication. That they should know exactly where they're at any one point in time in terms of their performance, because you're giving them good feedback. This whole premise of sitting down once a year or even twice a year and giving somebody an appraisal is kind of, when you think about it like that, it's like, yeah, actually, that's a good point. There shouldn't be any, well, at least there shouldn't be any surprises in the appraisal.
Absolutely not. And I think the way you're framing it is the way I really think about it too, because it's about relationships. And yes, that person that may be a 5-star person is performing at a high level, but you also want to be, like, to your point about recognition, like that should be happening all the time when it's deserved. And they shouldn't wonder, how am I doing?
No, where absolutely not. No, you're kind of losing if your employees are thinking like that. Like if they're starting to wonder whether they're doing a good job or not, you've lost the game. You're losing so much value. That discretionary effort piece comes from getting the right people. And people talk about employee engagement, by the way, and not many people talk about employee attachment. Attachment is the degree to which the employees love the company. You know, Simon Sinek talks about customers won't love you until your employees love you first. It's so true, because when you and I found this with Adventure World, as we gradually got better and better and we got better people and they did their thing. I could go on holiday. In the beginning, I couldn't go on holiday, right? I was just working flat out. I mean, I took some short breaks, but not a proper like 2-week holiday in Europe or wherever. But eventually I could, because I could walk away knowing that this team of people would still smash it when I was 20,000 miles away. They would just keep going. And that's the difference.
Yeah. Well, Mark, as Josh said, this has been a great conversation. I just have one last question for you, because there's been so many things that we've touched on today, so many great pieces of advice and statistics that you've shared. If someone is listening to this and they say, you know what, I really want to improve the customer experience at my facility, my zoo, my aquarium, my family entertainment center, what's the one thing you think that they should do to start that process?
Give me a call. I'll come and do my ACE framework assessment of your business, and then provide a plan for how to close the gap. Joking aside, it is really about that employee experience piece. Start there. Get the right people. Put effort into how you onboard them, how you induct them, and how you inspire them, and give them a very, very clear and consistent message from day one about what you're about and what your goals are and what you're aiming to achieve culturally. Hire on culture, not technical skills first. Bang up the whole recognition piece. Be a present leader. Be omnipresent. Be 11 out of 10. And have that continuous improvement mindset where you become comfortable and happy with each other in the team. Let's say you've got a leadership team, there's 7 or 8 people in the leadership team, that you can have honest and open conversations with each one of them that crosses into their department. This is your department's responsibility. Be respectful but confident enough to be able to say, we're all in this together, right? We'd like to have a conversation about this element, right? And this falls into your lap. And then those people not feeling bruised by that, but but responding positively and saying, yeah, we accept there's a challenge there and this is what we're trying to do to fix it. But if there's any way you can help us, that'd be great. Get those departments to work together. You know, classic, I think, is engineering and maintenance and ride operators. Classic is chefs and front of house people, right? There's usually a bit of friction between those. If you can take that friction away and get them to work more cohesively and collaboratively and in a way that they understand each other's challenges, that's an important part of that, I think, and that's about communication, right? Then you start to really change the momentum, you change the team dynamic. It's all about team, right? Yeah, and have that team focus, by the way, too, because it's you know, you'll very, very rarely hear me call people staff. I don't like the distinction of staff and management. I'd much prefer team members, employees. If it grammatically team doesn't work, but we're all part of a team. You know that Lego song, "Everything is awesome when you're part of a team." Do you know that song?
Yeah, it's the Lego movie.
That's right, the Lego movie. Everything is awesome. You change that out for staff. You go, everything is awesome. Everything is cool when you're part of the staff. It completely loses its value because you're part of a team. Whether you're the CEO or the food and beverage attendant or the cleaner, you're part of the team. And that's really important because you need structure, you need hierarchy for decision making and authority and responsibility. But you're still a part of the team. I think that's super important.
Yeah. So Mark, this has been just such a great opportunity to be able to talk to you, even though everything is awesome is now going to be stuck in my head for quite some time. But
the earworm.
And now I'll give the opportunity. If people are listening to this and saying, wow, I do need to implement the ACE framework and I need to get a hold of Mark, where would they get a hold of you and learn more about Shaw Thinks CX?
Yeah, so LinkedIn, obviously, Mark Shaw. You can email me at shawthingcx@outlook.com. That's shawthingcx@outlook.com. Website's www.shawthingcx.com.au. Yeah, that's where you'll find me hanging out.
Excellent. Well, we certainly appreciate you hanging out with us for the last little bit of time. This definitely was an 11 out of 10 interview. And so we thank you very much for your time and all of your insight. And for everybody out there who's listening and maybe watching, we are all attraction pros.